letters, and let's just say the fact there are 22 major trumps in the tarot is an interesting coincidence, about which the esotericists have made a great deal. If there is any connection, it is probably because there is something objectively powerful about the number 22. By the way, in certain circles, 22 plus 1. If 22 is the number of order and creation, then 23 is the number of craziness and chaos. And at Astrolabe, when I was still working there, we used to celebrate, or try to remember to celebrate, November 23rd as Harpomas. Harpo Marx was born on November 23rd. For those of you who are familiar with the Illuminati astrology, you'll get the reference. Okay, so there are 22 foundation letters, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 simples, or 12 simple ones she has here. The 3 mothers are Shin, which is sh, Aleph, which is Aleph is actually a very common consonant, but it isn't recognized in English. Whenever you say you're angry, angry begins with an Aleph. If you didn't have the Aleph, you would say, I'm very angry. See the difference? There's no break. Any vowel that begins with a break has an implicit Aleph in it. Okay. It's very much recognized in Semitic languages. It's becoming a very common consonant in Britain, where instead of saying butter, they say butter. Ever notice that? Yes. That's Aleph. It's a real consonant. It's at the back of the throat. You cut off the air. So, now we'll come back to that lore concerning the mothers shortly, and they're really important. Mishnah 5. And now we have a statement that when I finally figured out what I was reading, blew my mind. 10 Sephirot Blima. Their measures are 10 that have no end. In other words, their measures are infinite. The depth of beginning and the depth of end, that's time. The depth of good and the depth of evil, that is either, you can look at it either as to or away from God at the center, or consciousness versus unconsciousness. I don't think that's a choice. I think that's an identity. Then depth of high, the depth of low, spatial dimension number 1, depth of east and depth of west, spatial dimension number 2, and the depth of north and the depth of south, spatial dimension number 3. In other words, he is describing a 5-dimensional space, of which God is the 6th. Now, one can argue that there might be more dimensions in between, but if you think modern physics is the first to suggest that there might be more than 3 or 4 dimensions, this book was written between 2 and 600 CE. I'm not making this up for myself. The Arya Kaplan, whom I will say more about, who has written the most comprehensive work on the Sefer Yetzirah, and it's one of those books, you read it once, retiring frequently in bafflement. You keep on reading, and every time you read it, you see something you didn't notice before. It just keeps on speaking. It's a really remarkable book. His footnote here is, in this manner, our author describes the 5-dimensional space of the Sefer Yetzirah. So he was a physicist, by the way, before he got religion and became an Orthodox rabbi. And he saw it immediately as being in a hyperspace. 22 foundations, 3 mothers and 7 doubles and 12 simples. 3 mothers, Aleph, Mem, Shin. There they are. These are the 3 elements. They are also called elements. They are, Aleph is air, Mem is water, and Shin is fire. Earth is missing. Why? Because there is no earth at the realm of soul. Earth is created within soul, but it's not part of soul. So this is, in other words, a level of creation that is just, it's a little hard to describe where it is, but I can tell you, if you want to see it, just close your eyes and look inward, you're seeing it. because we aren't in the physical universe, we're on the borderline. We're partly physical and partly not. And that's true of all life, actually. And the line goes, Shen hisses, mem is silent, or one other translation says, mem hums, shin hisses, and aleph is the balance of breath between them. Now, there are two words that have the same triliterals but in a different order. There is Shem, which is spelled Shin Aleph Mem, with Aleph in the middle, and that is the Hebrew word for name. But if you go Mem Aleph Shin, going the other way, you get Moses, Moshe. This is the kind of stuff that goes on in Hebrew on a regular basis. You don't have to try very hard to find them. Although to really understand what's going on, you do have to try rather hard. These are just sort of, I think, things that are designed to pique your interest, so to speak. So we now have chapter 4, Mishnahs 1 and 3. A Mishnah is basically a line of verse. A chapter is a chapter. Mishnah 1, 7 doubles, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kof, Pei, Resh, and Tav, behave in two ways. That is, they have a soft sound and a harsh sound. That's why they're called doubles. In modern Hebrew, there is no double sound to R, but my suspicion is that the two sounds of R are Ra and Ra, with an H sound before it. The Greek R, by the way, is always pronounced with an H in front of it, like rhododendron in Greek would be rhododendron. And I suspect the other R is the same as the Greek R. So one of them is a harsh and difficult sound, and the other one is a fairly smooth and easy sound. Bet is vet, Gimel and Jimel, Dalet and Thalet, Kof and Chof, Pei, Fe, Resh, Hresh, Ta and Tha, or Tav and Thav, rather. See, the double sounds. We have a number of words and letters in English that do this too. And the 7 doubles in speech and in Timorah, that means exchange. The Timorah of wisdom is foolishness, ignorance. The Timorah of wealth is poverty. You see, it's the inversion. The Timorah of seed is desolation. The Timorah of life is death. The Timorah of sovereignty is slavery. The Timorah of peace is war. The Timorah of beauty is ugliness. There are 7 of these. What do you think they might be referring to? Any guesses?
7 planets.
The what?
Planets.
Yeah, of course. Just in case you're any doubt in your mind, Mishnah 6, 7 doubles, and he lists them again, of foundation. He hewed, engraved, combined, weighed, and permuted them, and formed with them 7 stars or planets in the world, 7 days in the year, that is in the week, and 7 gates, openings in the body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Consequently, in astrology, there is a planet that rules each orifice in the face. You have 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and 1 mouth. Adds up to 7. And this is explicitly stated too. 7 gates, openings to orifices in the body of male and female. They mean the head. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. And that's a direct translation. Now, none of the books tell you which planets are which. None of them. This is an exercise left to the student. You remember those passages in textbooks you used to have in school? The rest is an exercise left to the student. Well, I kind of mindlessly one day came up with this, and I started looking at it, and I said, my God, I think I've done it. I may not have done it. This is conjectural, but it's plausible. Wisdom and foolishness, Mercury. Well, on one hand, you have Hermes Trismegistus, and on the other hand, you have the Coyote and Roadrunner. They are both mercurial, especially the Roadrunner, because you have the trickster, the coyote figure in Indian lore, American Indian lore, and you have the wise sage encompassed in one planetary type. Wealth and poverty. Saturn obviously can be correlated with poverty, but in fact the Saturnian type often gains incredible amounts of wealth, usually beyond their ability to use it. I suspect it's born out of insecurity, but the fact is Saturn can produce either wealth or poverty. Fruitfulness and childlessness. Well, the moon certainly has to do with fruitfulness, but an afflicted moon can produce childlessness. The sun, life and death. Well, the life part's fairly obvious, but you have to go to Vegas to experience the death part. I recommend a weekend outdoors hiking. No, I don't actually. In early August, when the temperature is 115, in the shade. Then you will see the death aspect of the sun. And oh, by the way, in India, the sun is a malefic, correct? Yeah. And that's why. Because when you get down toward the equator, the sun is, shall we say, an ambiguous blessing at best. Although if it weren't there, it wouldn't be ambiguous. It would be clearly necessary. So life and death. Dominion and dependence. Jupiter is normally more related to dominion, but it can be dependence also. To wit, people who have very strong Jupiters in a nocturnal chart, one of the symptoms of that combination is they feel entitled to be able to depend on everybody else to take care of them. Entitlement is most definitely a Jupiterian quality. It's a negative Jupiterian quality. And of course, peace and war for Mars. The war is obvious. How is the peace? What did they used to call sheriffs in the Old West? Peace officers? Because they were the force that could maintain the peace. I will have to give the Department of Defense for not calling itself the Department of Peace. That would have been overkill. No pun intended. Beauty and ugliness, Venus. Wonderfully marvelous, graceful beauty is clearly Venusian. But every so often you'll run into what I call the kitsch syndrome. It's an Anglo-German word. Kitsch is that kind of very busy looking, trashy kind of stuff that you find in diamond stores a lot. It doesn't have any real beauty, but it's sort of flashy. That's the ugliness side of Venus. So I wouldn't care to die defending this analysis, but I think it's plausible. However, the bottom line is clear. The planets all have benefic and malefic qualities. And this is the only text that asserts that unambiguously. There are other texts that assert it if you read some other texts with them in addition. Now, there are 12 simple letters. He, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod, Lamed, Nun, Samech, Ayin, that shouldn't be a semicolon, Taxti, Zadi, that's what that is, but that can be a way of spelling it, Kuf. Their foundation is speech, thought, walking, sight, hearing, action, coition, smell, sleep, anger, eating, and laughter, or play. I haven't tried to correlate these, but what does 12 suggest to you? That's right, 12 signs of the zodiac. And then he goes on, and in case you didn't get it, 12 simple ones, and he gives the letters again. Their foundation is, he engraved, carved, combined, weighed, and permuted them, and formed with them 12 signs in the world, 12 months in the year, and 12 rulers in the body of male and female. What does that refer to? The parts of the body. Head belongs to Aries, throat belongs to Taurus, arms and shoulders belong to Gemini, the upper chest belongs to Cancer, a little further down is Leo, a little further down yet is Virgo, Libra is, actually Virgo is in the back, Libra is in the front, and then you get to Scorpio, enough said, and then Sagittarius governs the hips and upper legs, Capricorn the knees, Aquarius the shins, and Pisces the feet. And that's an explicit reference to that idea, which, by the way, was very much in existence at that point in history. Whether it was 200 CE or 600 CE, that correlation had already been made. Now, here's what I want you to notice about the tree. You've all seen the Tree of Life before, I assume?
Yeah.
How many have not seen the Tree of Life ever in books on occultism and so forth? This is it in any case. It's very schematic. At the top is Keter, then Chokmah, then Binah, then you zip down through Da'at there in the middle. It's sort of a hole left by something falling, and what it is specifically, it was Malkut falling. That's when Malkut is sufficient, when the world is sufficiently enlightened, Malkut will rise up into Da'at, and the bride will marry the bridegroom. I used to ask the question in my earlier days, why does anybody study the Qabalah? It just seems like going out of your way to make things up. And then I began realizing that the Qabalah, and particularly the Tree of Life, is a diagram which explains almost every conceivable kind of religious experience. It's an incredibly intense idea. I'm not going to convince you of that this afternoon, rapidly becoming evening. But if you study it, you will begin to see it. I'll give you a few examples in a moment. Keter is the crown, and oh, by the way, it corresponds to the crown chakra. The top thing in both the chakra system and the Tree of Life is the crown, explicitly. Now, there is a difference, but going on, you'll notice if you count the levels, Keter is the first level, Binah Chokmah is the second level, Gevurah Chesed is the third level, Tiferet is the fourth, Hod Netzach is the fifth, Yesod is the sixth, Malkut is the seventh. There are 7 levels. So this looks like it's closely related in its ideas to the chakras, except that of the chakras, 3 of them are binary. Does anybody know if there's any similar tradition in Indian lore about binary chakras? I don't know of any, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. However, there's one colossal difference, which I will demonstrate by sitting in a chair. Nice high one. This is really going to be very nice tomorrow. So my compliments to the person who brought it to me. Okay. Crown. Then you have one here, one here, one here, one here. But at any rate, the 7th one is here somewhere. The back, I believe. The butt. That isn't the way it works with the Tree of Life, because the top one is here and the bottom one is the feet. And it's interesting because it implies, symbolically, a greater involvement in this world of the people who came up with the Tree of Life than of the people who came up with the chakra. Now that may be unfair, I don't know, but it's an observation that has occurred to me once or twice, or 100 or 200 times. So on this tree, at any rate, you will notice there are 1, 2, 3, and only 3 horizontal paths. The top one is clearly Shin, the middle one is Aleph, and the bottom one is Mem. The 22 paths on the Tree of Life correspond to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, if we count the vertical paths, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The vertical paths correspond to the planets, and the slantwise or oblique paths correspond to the signs. 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 12 is 22. Now, there's an interesting thing here, again, going back to the Golden Dawn guys. They have scrambled us up beyond belief. I don't know if it's a blind or stupidity, but they have, except for Men, Aleph, and Shin, which they have in the more or less right places, all the other ones are the doubles and the simples are mixed up incredibly. I have, however, found trees of life from the Hebrew tradition where they are assigned correctly, but we still don't know for sure which oblique path is Aries, which one is Taurus, and so forth, nor do we know for sure which horizontal path is Jupiter, which horizontal path is Saturn, and so forth. So the problem has only been partially solved, but the 22 paths and the 12 sephirot, what look like globes here, are the 32 paths of wisdom that are talked about at the beginning of the Sefer Yetzirah, and there is also a Hebrew work called the 32 paths of wisdom. What this device is, clearly, and has certainly is in modern magic, in modern Kabbalistic magic, is a meditation device. And here I'm going to tell you an interesting story, which is true. A man named Richardson Alan Richardson, wrote a book called Dancers to the Gods. And it was what he did was he gathered up the magical diaries of two followers of Dion Fortune who worked together doing path working. Path working is meditations that are done on the Tree of Life. It's a standard process in Golden Dawn descended magical groups. And they had no personal relationship except for their working together on path working. They would come and meet at an agreed upon hour, sit in chairs opposite each other, and they'd say, okay, let's start, or words to that effect, and they'd meditate, and they'd start path working on the tree, paying attention to what they saw, where they went, and so forth. And then they would have a cup of tea when they finished, and as far as anybody can tell, had no further communications. They would go home and write their experiences in their magical diary, and when he looked at the magical diaries, they had always went to the same place, saw the same things at the same time. That's a little interesting. I don't know what it means in terms of their spiritual significance, but it is very interesting. And there's no evidence of fraud here at all. Of course, if you happen to be a debunker type, you'll say, of course there's fraud. Don't be ridiculous. These were two older English people. They were a man and a woman. And they were very proper and very orderly. And aside from being into magic, they wouldn't see any point in being dishonest. You know the type? You probably have them here too. Now, the next concept is called the lightning flash. And this is here at this point you're going to learn that the planets are in the tree twice. They are in the tree at one level as the vertical paths. They're in the tree at another level in that 7 of the Sephiroth, these circles, are planets. And the lightning flash goes as follows. This, first of all, let me explain what it is. This is the sequence of paths that the energy from the divine into this world take. And so as the divine energy descends to this world downward in the lightning flash, the meditator goes upward through it in the reverse direction. And this happens to be one of the more sophisticated examples of the ascent and descent of the soul through the spheres. This is an extremely stylized solar system. Or should I say terrestrial system, since it's geocentric. So here again, we have a completely astrological system. So it starts at Keter and goes to Chokhmah, and Keter indicates the turning of the universe once every 24 hours, which the ancients thought was the universe turning, not the Earth, and that's the symbol of oneness. Chokhmah is considered to be the sphere of the fixed stars, and that tells us that this system dates after Hipparchus, because this system betrays an awareness of precession. Because when you distinguish between the prima mobile and the zodiac, you know there is precession. 9th sphere, 8th sphere. The universe, that's when you're numbering downward, numbering from 10 down instead of 10 up. Well, yeah. 9th sphere, 8th sphere, 7th sphere, etc. Now, Chokhmah sends its energy to Binah, which is Saturn. And Binah comes from, as best as I can understand it, a Hebraic root which means betweenness. So Binah is the beginning within the tree of the of division and separation. Chokmah means wisdom, Binah means understanding. What's the difference? Wisdom is a direct, unmediated perception of the truth. It's intuition at a high level. Binah is what is called discursive intellect, where you think about something and you think in categories and so forth, and everything is fairly rigorous. Then the energy of Binah is sent to Chesed, which is mercy, and it's ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter sends its energy to Gevarah, which is severity, it means, which is ruled by Mars. Now here's what's interesting, because with the Mars, as a friend of mine looking at this as I was describing once said, these are the planets in their exaltations. They're not the planets in their domiciles. So Saturn, so between this, is Libra, not Aquarius or Capricorn. Chesed is not Pisces or Sagittarius, it's Cancer. Gevorah, or Mars, is Capricorn. So what you have here is the Capricorn-Cancer split, which broadly speaking is one of the two polarities that indicates the constant battle between compassionate liberalism and severe conservatism, although this is not the kind of Looney Tunes conservatism that is running amok in America. You might say it's the person who wants to take care of everybody versus the person who wants to enforce law and order, but fairly. Tiferet is, that's the sun. That's where the energy goes from Givarah, and or Jivarah. Sometimes a hard G, sometimes a soft. I don't know which one is officially correct. And Tiferet is the sun in Aries, not the sun in Leo, because it's all about self in a developing context. Leo is a settled self. Aries is a developing self. Netzach is Venus, and the Netzach-Hod pairing is another liberal conservative, because Netzach is, oh, sweetness and light and beauty and harmony, and Hod is, let's think about this a while. It's the harsh side of Mercury. It's not, so Netzach is Venus in Pisces. Mercury has nowhere to go. It has to be Mercury in Virgo, because that is its exaltation. And Yesod is the moon. It's called foundation, and it's in Taurus, not Cancer. And finally, the earth is the earth is the earth is the earth. So not only does this have all sorts of astrological implications, but there are entire lengthy treatises written in the early modern period putting all of this together. I have one of them, but I've never gotten around to translating it, partly because it has what is clearly an error in the assignment of the Sephiroth to the planets. And I can't, I look at that and say, well, there's very little point in going on here because the system they're preaching is busted, said he kindly. So the order of the planets in the Sephiroth, as numbered, represent the order in which the creative flash comes down from the highest forms of divinity that are above and beyond the manifestation. These are in order: Ayin, that's another spelling, nothing, the Ayin Sof, the unlimited, and the Ayin Sof Hour, the unlimited light. These are not just names, they are attempts to designate different aspects of the ultimate. The lightning flash in reverse is the path of the enlightened soul, either at death or through enlightened meditation in this world. This places the tree of life in the long line of systems which connect the arrangement of the planetary spheres to the processes of incarnation and enlightenment. Okay, there is more material, but it's in the other slideshow. That was where I ran out of time. Okay, so let me bring up the other slideshow. A little more primitive, but it contains further info. This was originally Astrology and the Qabalah, given at the Kepler College webinar in August 16, 2009. Okay, so let's fire it up. 4-minute slideshow. Start from first slide. Okay. And this originally was in Hebrew, but transliterated, it's Tetragrammaton, Yirat Chokmah Reshit, which is the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, which is actually the title of Ibn Ezra's major work. And here again we have that already. We have that. We have that. We have that. You have that. And here is the, in case you're wondering, is the bibliography for Arya Kaplan, Sefer Yetzirah. I think I had it in the other slideshow too. Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, written in 1990. That isn't a joke. Main is M-E. And so forth. Okay, and here are the Hebrew. Okay, here are the Hebrew letters I didn't get to show you before. So we'll pause on this briefly. This was a very difficult slide to transfer to PowerPoint without buggering up the Hebrew. So we have Aleph, which is ox, Bet, which is house, Gimel, which is camel, Dalet means door, also means tent flap. That's actually its proper meaning, tent flap. Hey, which is window, that became, it became two letters. It became H and E, believe it or not. That happened in the Roman alphabet, because in the Greek alphabet it became the long E, or eta, and the Greeks did not write out the H. They just put a little mark over the opening vowel of the letter, which indicated you went at the beginning. But in Latin alphabet it became, it came differentiated into E and H. Vav is the hook, Zayin is a weapon, Chet is a fence, Tet is a snake, Yod is a hand. So I guess my name is Robert Yod, except actually it's, yeah, I guess it is the whole hand, because Kaf is the fist. Lamed is the ox goad, Mem is water, Nun is fish. Do you remember Joshua, son of Nun, anybody? That means he was son of a fish. Sounds awfully a lot like something else, but I don't mean it to. And that's triggered speculations in a lot of people. Samech is a prop, as in holding something up. Ayin is eye. And this is weird because, in fact, there is supposed to be no connection whatsoever between Hebrew and Indo-European languages. But there are actually quite a few words in Hebrew that resemble Indo-European roots, and this is one of them, ayin, eye. Pei, and it means nothing. By the way, the pronunciation of ayin is very similar to the pronunciation of aleph, but a little different. Those of you that know some of the African dialects will notice a certain similarity. Ayin is ayin, and aleph is aleph. You hear a little bit of an at the beginning. Ayin, it's a big ayin, like that. Not quite the click you hear in the African dialects, but it's getting warm. Even it, cough, yeah. Even more strikingly reproduced in Dutch, which has a lot of guttural consonants. Tzade is a fish hook, Kof is the back of the head, and that is very close to the Yiddish word kop, but that's derived from German. So here we have another one of those. Resh is the head as a whole. It also means beginning. Bereshit, Elohim, I can't remember the whole quotation in Hebrew, but Bereshit means in the beginning, because it also means beginning as well as head. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. Sometimes it's Rosh, sometimes it's Resh. The vowels are a little bit transitory in Semitic languages. Shin means tooth, Tav means cross, and it's the ancestor of the letter T. We have two S's in this alphabet, Samech and Shin, and believe it or not, Samech is the ancestor of the letter S in the Roman alphabet. Shin went bye-bye. We had to reproduce it by spelling SH or something weird like that. However, Shin, in Kabbalistic terms, stands for the fiery breath of the Holy Spirit. When the apostles got the ability to speak in tongues, fires of flame tongues of flame, as I said, came down to them, and that concept is related to the letter Shin in Qabalah. And here we have again the categories, the three mothers. You can see it would have been really nice if I gotten all this transferred, but we have covered this material, so I will let it go. Here again is the tree of life, and we've covered that. The Sephiroth, yep, covered that. Further reading. Okay, I think we're actually done. Any questions?
Yeah.